Back, we're looking again at our electric field, magnetic field simulator. So now we want to add some interaction with the sliders. So we have interaction like this. Okay, but we want to get the edit boxes working with the sliders. So let's consider the sliders. So as before with edit boxes, they have callbacks as well. As you should remember, they have create functions. And in a similar vein as to setting the default values for the edit boxes, I want to go through now and modify the sliders. Okay. So with the sliders, you need to remember that they have a minimum value and a maximum value that they move between. Okay, and the value that the slider is at the moment can get pulled out. So what we want to do is I just want to set up each of the slider boxes to contain some sort of relevant values. So what I want to do is I want to set the this is my time slider, so I want to set the minimum. This is the handle because I'm inside the time slider create function. That means the time slider is the current handle object, so I use the H object. So the value of the slider, remember slider values are numeric, whereas edit boxes are text. So the value is going to be 0, and the maximum, I'm going to make that, let's just make it 5, okay? Alright, now let's set the value H object. Actually, I'll just copy this code just to save some typing. So set the value, and I'm going to set that to whatever the default one was before, 0.1, 0.2. Okay. So now this sets up default value. Okay. So that's about that. So the minimum value is set, the maximum is set. So now let's just go through and do this for each slider. Okay, so there's the time, here's the phase slider create function. So the minimum value of the angle can be 0, the max can be 180, and the current value at the start is 0. Let's go to the frequency one now. Frequency slider, 0. Let's go up to 1000 Hertz, and the default again is 50. Now we've got frequency. Let's go to attenuation. Create function for attenuation. Here we go, 0. Let's make it go up to 10, and its default value is 2. Okay. And finally, the last one, slowly getting there, amplitude. So let's go up to 10, and the default value I think was 5. Okay. So now let's run this. Those guys are not there. That's interesting. Seems I've forgotten to actually change that word to max. So there you go. It's a silly thing on my part. So let's just make sure each of these is set up for the max. Okay. Alright. So now we see the sliders have been preset. Okay. So that's starting to look pretty good. So now we can get into the callback as well. Now what we need to keep in mind is that we have two sources of input. We have edit boxes and sliders. So we want them to interact with each other. Okay. So you need to think about, okay, we're getting the value and doing something with it, and that's what we're doing with our graph and the calculation, but also we need to update the other source of input. So if we update edit boxes, let's fix the sliders and vice versa. So with the slider ones, so with the edit one actually, let's just look at that. So this is going to be much the same, except I want to update, I want to set, let's just copy this code down here. I want to set the value of this just after it's been defined to be handles dot time. Okay, so I update the edit box, it gets the new value, and then we set up the slider with that value. So let's just copy that now and put that into the slider callback. So handles.time is equal to, now we need to use this one for the slider. Okay. And we need to set the string for the edit box to be this. So handles, the current handle, the string is num2string handles time. Okay. And we need to remember to include the GUI data handles update, okay, because we've edited handles here. If we want the changes to be carried over to multiple uses of our GUI, we must always update using this line, okay. So let's just run that now and see if the time one is working. Okay. So let's just make it big. What was it, 4? Okay. So the slider seems to be doing its thing. It's just not updating. So let's have a look at that. It's because I forgot to put the handle of the other piece of input that we want. Okay, so I actually need to change this to handles time edit, and likewise with the edit box I need to make this guy handles dot time slider, and that should give me what I want. Okay, so notice how the slider is fixing the graphs are doing their thing, but also this edit box is updating. Likewise, if we change that to 1, we see this changes. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So this is what we need to do across the board. So we need to make sure that if we have multiple sources of input, they need to interact seamlessly. So by updating the output to the user, but also updating the other input sources so it looks like a seamless operation. So we can basically just copy this over for the other time, for the other edit boxes. So let's just go to the phase edit box, callback. So we need to update phase slider handles.phase. Okay. And we do this for all of them. So with frequency slider handles.frequency. Attenuation is next. So attenuation. So hopefully when you're building your own GUIs in the lab and for the assignment, most of the code that you're going to be executing is fairly repetitive. So you can get the guts of your guts of the operation going up pretty easily. Well, maybe not easily, but you can get it going. And eventually when that's done, you can hopefully just reuse it across the other callbacks, okay? So now let's look at the time slider. And we can use this slider callback for all the other sliders. So let's go to the phase slider. That's this guy. So handles.phase is equal to the current value of the phase slider edit box. The new value of the phase edit box is equal to handles.phase, and everything else is being done the exact same way for each input. So now let's go to the frequency slider callback, and that's this little fella. So the handles.frequency is now equal to the new value of the frequency slider. Let's update the frequency edit box. Okay, frequency edit box. So we're almost there. Okay. So this is attenuation. So you need to remember when you're building your own GUIs for the assignment and the labs or whatever, you need to consistently update things across the board. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So it takes a little bit of planning in terms of what you want the GUI to look like, and also how the GUI interacts with itself. Okay. So you see, if I slide the amplitude, the attenuation, it updates the box, but it also updates my graphs. If I update this now to 8, that's cool. So these should hopefully all be doing their thing and not causing me too much grief. To make the frequency bigger and to make the timescale smaller. Okay. So we start to see if we move the phase. Okay, that's starting to look pretty cool. Okay, so now we've got edit boxes going, we have sliders going. They're providing input for the user so they can change what they want, and it updates the program accordingly. It updates the output, and it also interacts with the other inputs. Okay, there's a multiple bunch of directions I could take with this now, which I probably won't do in this screencast. But what you can do, what else you could do is just to consider what else you might want in a GUI. Okay, so whether it's more labels for the graphs, labels for the input, or more input, or if you could animate the graphs. One of the extended tasks for the lab that involved the electric fields was to get things animated, and you could do that in this. So as you edit the input, you could see how the electric field gets drawn out over time. Okay, so really the possibilities are endless. It's only what you want to do and how much work you want to put into it. So you definitely need to plan out what you want in terms of what the GUI will look like on the screen, what objects you need in the GUI to do what you want. So whether that's sliders, edit boxes, whether it's list boxes, radio buttons, things like that, graphs, and so on. And you need to figure out how you want it to work together. Okay, so that's with things like getting the input going and working hopefully somewhat seamlessly, so it looks like a somewhat usable. I've got a bracket wrong there. It should be square and square. So just things like this. You just need to plan it before you dive in. Okay, so that's just my only word of warning. So just make sure you plan these before you dive straight in, because otherwise it can become pretty overwhelming pretty quickly. Okay, thanks.